Welcome and thank you for joining today's webinar, Building Trust Builds Brands, SEO Link Building Strategies That Work, presented by Strategic SEO Solutions and Search Engine Land. I'm your host, Cynthia Ramsaran. Before we begin, if you have any audio issues, click the audio icon on your screen to enable your audio. If you have any viewing issues, you can use the Q&A section at any time to communicate with us. You can send questions directly to the speaker about his presentation at any time. Without further ado, let's get to the presentation. Joining us today is John Lightfoot, founder and CEO of Strategic SEO Solutions. Welcome, John. I'll turn things over to you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, everybody who's in attendance as well. Very excited about today's webinar. This is a topic, of course, that's very important to us and the brands that we steward, and really excited to get into this. So first and foremost, I just want to say that Strategic SEO Solutions, SEO is really all we do, right? So I mean, we literally live, breathe, eat, sleep SEO, and that's a lot of technical and on-site and off-site. This link building, this building of trust and building of brands, that's a segment too, and that's what we're going to focus on today. And so I'll kind of jump us in here and let us take a look at today's agenda. So first and foremost, we really want to take a look at how building authority builds brands. In addition, why link building for this year, 2022? I mean, link building's been around a long time, but why? Why now? In addition to that, which strategies really work? And are all links created equal? What metrics really matter? And lastly, this is just kind of a little segment that I think is important too, is really getting kind of into those granular factors to consider. So we're going to move through all of these things. But before we do, I really want to just take a look at the notion of trust. Trust is such an important part of all of this. And there's different paradigms. There's the paradigm from Google and consumers, and they really do intersect, as you see here. But in which ways do they intersect? And I like to take a look at this because before we begin building links, let's really understand kind of that notion of value to all of this, right? There's over 250,000 new websites every day, and Google cannot trust them all, nor should they. And so really what we look in order to outrank and outperform in search today is we're looking to build trust. And that's measured effectively through this notion of domain authority or domain rating. And so building the domain authority really helps to build trust with Google. But you know as well as I do, the consumers, your targeted demos, they're really not running your core trust measure. They're not running your domain authority. So that score isn't something that's necessarily at top of level going to move the needle for them. But what does work for them is when they see that you are trusted. Now, the reason why is, as you can see here, from data breaches, to just all the elements that are happening in today's world, brand skepticism is just at an all-time high. You'll notice a link here at the bottom of this slide. Those who garner access to this deck, you can look at it a bit closer to see what's really happening, why there's such a dramatic atrophy happening to consumers. At the end of the day, it gets very transactional, this value of trust. Think about it this way. If they perform a search and you are served up at the top of Google, not in the paid ads, but in the organic sense of that was Google literally selected your page, your website over millions and millions of others, that definitively imparts trust. But why link building in 2022? I hope what I'm about to say next kind of really creates this dotted line, this bridge to the notions around this, right? So let's think about SEO high level for a minute, right? Search engine optimization really is this effort to help you rank better in search, to become the solution, to answer the query. And part of SEO, right, is on-page optimization, having a definitive keyword strategy, right? Having all of the health factors that matter to SEO as healthy as you can, as strong as you can, as fortified as you can. And when you do that, then Google, I say, hears you. They understand what it is that you're saying, your website's saying. They understand why you think you matter, who you should matter to, what keywords you want to rank for. They hear that. But really, my question is do they trust it? I mean, doing all these things, the alt data, the metadata, site maps, all this content that we're working on, that's fantastic. and they hear it, but do they trust it? It's really when others talk about you, talk about your categories, your products, your value propositions in the same way that you talk about yourself. It's when those other people who already have the trust do that, that's when the synergy and the success really happen. That's when Google both hears, okay, they crawl, they see, they understand, and they begin to trust. But building links, having that authority, it has influence beyond this segment. Trust is something we've talked about. There's no doubt about the fact that link building is going to enhance your domain authority if done right. Massive caveat there. I know many of you probably thinking that. It can increase your page authority as well, right? And help propel rankings within search. To me, it's a definitive because, my team and I, we do this day in, day out. We see it, we do it, it happens. But beyond that, it can enhance behavioral components as well. Trust influences the decision patterns that consumers make, whether it's lead generation, whether it's e-com and transactional. Trust is going to be big. And that's why it helps to build the brand. There's also psychographic segmentations to this as well. You need to think about the contextual connectivity with your audience and helping your audience connect with your brand in that same way. You want to bridge that pain point to the solutions that you offer. And you want to intersect in ways that are relevant to the interest in the opinions of your demographics. So relevance is a part of link building. You need to be seen as a solution and part of the industry narrative. This is why trust builds brands. Okay, so that's just a little bit around those types of segments of why are we doing this? What should we be thinking about? This shouldn't be a box that we're checking. Rather, it needs to be something that we're methodically considering and what those goals are. Now, part of the goals, okay, should be to have this foundational understanding of what is your current trust, right? What is your current domain authority? What is it today? And maybe just as importantly, what is your competitors? I mean, when you're thinking about building your domain authority, right? Are you a DA 20, 30, 40 today? But where are your competitors? You should have a target. This notion shouldn't be around this kind of paradigm of we want to be a DA 50. You hear that a lot. Let's get in the DA 50s. Let's get in the DA 60s. Why? We know that it's an increase of trust and you're building trust, but if all things are created equal, if your website is healthy, if you have strong, health metrics from an on-page optimization perspective, and so do your competitors, it's very likely that they're thinking about SEO too, and they have efforts happening there. Then the tipping point can definitively be authority, domain authority. Is theirs higher? Is yours higher? Right? So do you know that? And I want to go ahead and just open up a poll real quick to get a sense of in the last 90 days. And I say that because, domain authority isn't static. It moves, it goes up, it goes down, right? So the last 90 days, did you run any analysis to get a sense of where your authority is today, your DA or even your DR, where that is today in comparison to your competitors? So I'm going to open up that poll so you can think about that. I think it's really important to think about that minimally so that as you begin a strategy, there is a methodical, siloed approach to where do you want to be and why. So I'll let you kind of think about that for a moment, get a sense of, where are you? Have you looked at it? Yes, no, that's okay. Were you higher? Are you lower? Where are you today? And maybe that's that inception point, that catalyst for beginning to think through when you do perform SEO from the offsite link building perspective, that you have a goal in mind and an approach and a level you're trying to reach with a reason why. And exceeding it is fine, but we should at least know where we're headed. So that's the first part. But when we know kind of what that trajectory looks like and where we're headed, what the landscape is, what we're trying to achieve, we really have to ask ourselves what strategies work. And maybe that's why you're here. And I just want to say one last thing. We're going to move right into this. Beyond the strategies that work, I'm going to look at these with you now. But after that, stick around because it's beyond the strategy is kind of the metrics, that analytical discernment around, this are all links created equal? How do we know? How do we know which ones we really want to get? So before we do that, let's take a look at what strategies are working today. 2022. Well, frankly, there's a lot of them. And there's more tactics all the time. But I'm going to break these down. We're going to walk through each one of these, and then we're going to get into the metrics too. So let's start off with these unlinked brand mentions. I mean, the reality is, people are probably talking about your brand out there, and every day there could be more instances where your brand is mentioned in a narrative, in a post, in a conversation. You're probably being spoken about, and the question is each time someone is speaking about your brand, are they actually linking to your site through those brand mentions? Sometimes probably yes, and sometimes likely no. So this is kind of a low-hanging fruit. You can increase your authority by locating the unlinked brand mentions, times when people are speaking about your brand, but they haven't exercised the opportunity to link to you. So locate them. Reach out to the site owners, reach out to the editors. It's a little bit of an organic push, but it's very, very viable, certainly worth your effort. We do a lot of good work in that space, and it makes a big difference. You can request a do follow link from that mention. And those pickups that you get are just low-hanging fruit. They're just great opportunities, and they help people when they hear about your brand have a really actionable way to actually intersect and engage with your brand. So there are ways, very, very easy ways to kind of monitor when your brand is talked about, but maybe not linked to. SEMrush, Ahrefs, they have great tutorials on how to do that. You can harness and utilize those standard software, SaaS solutions to do that. Again, if you go ahead and grab a copy of this deck, you can get these links right in there. But monitoring your brand mentions and being mindful of those links is just a really easy win. A lot of you may be doing this already. We do a lot of that. Here's the next segment I really want to touch on, and that's digital PR. Okay. So this, yes, press releases and press release syndication, there's no doubt about it. Harnessing PR is a fantastic way to increase your authority, right? Your domain authority. Each of these PRs that hit the syndication, you're going to get a backlink. Not all of them are going to be do follow, but some of them are going to be, and they're very, very strong. There's a lot of trust that comes from that. Podcasts are the same way. That's a digital PR perspective. So getting into podcasts, those episodes, those show notes are, almost always going to have a link back to your site. But beyond the linking, right, beyond just garnering that backlink from any of these initiatives, think about this. You also pick up thought leadership. And that's very, very important to trust, right? You also have an ability to personalize your brand beyond the logo. And frankly, to be transparent with everybody here, I could speak probably for almost an hour on each one of these things. So I'm not going to, but I will just pause for a quick moment and say, the ability to personalize your brand beyond the logo. We think a lot about brand equity, and it's vastly important. It is. But oftentimes when you pull large crowds, what you're going to find out is the trust of a company matters dramatically, right? But when you can put a face and personalize, and here comes the other segment of that word, when you can humanize your company, okay, there's almost a visceral connection that happens too, and that's valuable as well. So the link is valuable. Thought leadership is valuable, and garnering that new vein of trust journalistically also very valuable. So when we think about link building, it's going to come from a myriad of perspectives. It could be bloggers and lifestylers. It could be, in different veins of content and context. Journalists have their own lens, their own value of trust. From consumers' perspective, yes, but from Google's perspective, definitively. It's like nurturing an ecosystem. So we want to be talked about in an authoritative way from trusted resources in a multitude of paradigms and sites and outlets and places, right? So with all of that being said, this digital PR actually provides a myriad of ways to do that. Now, beyond the digital PR, oh, by the way, Haro and Quoted, those are some areas that we use. And I think that might be an area that you might want to think about leveraging into. It lets you monitor the journalistic chatter and get into the pickups and the narratives that are happening in that space. Obviously, just standard press release and syndications are great too. Reaching out to podcasts, fantastic. Although we've garnered interviews, podcast pickups, all of it straight out of Haro and Quoted too for our clients. So Those are fantastic ways to begin that digital PR journey. All right, resource guides and link roundups. So getting in the, I'm noting here that getting in the list garners trust, right? At the end of the day, as I said here, from shoes to SaaS, resource guides, link roundups, they're prolific. That little image on the screen, well, it's actually real. I took that screenshot. And what I was looking at there was men's shoe guide. And I'll talk a little bit about the search query I performed here in just a moment, but notice how what we're seeing here is like ultimate guide to men's shoes, types of men's shoes, the essential shoe guide. If you're selling shoes for men, to be part of that curated list and to garner a link back to you from something so semantically contextual as that, that's very, very, very valuable in a multitude of ways, right? I mean, from just the transactional type of traffic you can get, the intent is huge on that, but the trust. If you have a website that's ranking high in Google and they're talking about best in class within industries and you're part of that roundup and that guide and that list, I mean, that provides dramatic value to your brand. And it also provides a link. And so there's a trust component that comes out of that as well. But the best way to do it, like how do we do that next? Well, I like to use search operators. And so if you look kind of closely, I know it's small for me too, but what you see in my search query at the top is it says all in title : you could see it here, all in title, men's shoe guide, right? You could also just use in title shoes. If you want to get a little more broad, you can do the all in URL or in URL. So basically what that's saying is, do you want it to be in the title or do you actually want it to be in the URL, this particular word or these particular words? And if you put it into the URL, now what you're really looking at is that kind of slug, right? The notion of, well, when the post was published, built into the URL structure are these keywords or this lens towards what you're trying to get involved with. They both work. They both bubble up opportunities. In fact, there's a lot of other search operators that bubble up more opportunities. These are great ways to do it, though. And when you think about it again, it's so interesting because you do really want to think about it, well, from a consumer's perspective, from the core demos perspective. If I'm in a list, top, fintech SaaS software that, for 2022, and I'm in that list, or I'm in the list for, shoes or clothing, whatever it may be, to certain food, but the top 10 list. Well, consumers, they may not trust me, right? But they're going to trust other people talking about me. So that's great. But from the side of Google's going to look at this and they're going to say, okay, so they're talking about you from the context of, you're a great resource, you belong in this top list, and that's fantastic, right? The thematic nature, the contextual semantic nature, meaning what's being spoken about and where it's being directed to your website, is all vastly in a synergy. Those types of things are very, very important. That's why sometimes looking in the URL is also really valuable in a link. Because if it's in the URL, that sends another layer of context to Google, and they can, if your link points to a page about men's shoes, that's contextual to that piece. There's a nice dotted line. So this resource guide link roundup, getting other people to talk about you in the way you talk about yourself, very, very important. So that's something that should be on your radar. All right, broken link building. I know this is not anything necessarily new. You're probably already thinking about it or looking at it. But at the end of the day, if you look at it from the editorials side of the fence, if they have a website and their website has a broken link, well, that's not helping their SEO. But more importantly, it's not helping their users, their audience. Those who are reading their content will not have a good user experience with broken links. So if you reach out to those sites and let them know that you found a broken link, and that you'd like to replace it with something of value, that is a very easy link building strategy. So it works with regularity. So the first step is to find the broken links. So you want to do that, and we'll talk about how to do that in a minute. You want to create similar content or share a replacement URL that was similar to the content that was broken. And you also want to reach out and ask that they replace the 404 error with your link. So it's a win-win. The website owner's site health increases, the user experience gets better, and they're directed to you. And so this is a fantastic strategy, and there's so many broken links. In fact, every day, as for the clients that we steward, as we look at this, there's just a sea of opportunity. There's no doubt about that. But I did want to talk about this. It's so interesting how brands focus on their broken links and picking up broken links related to the brand, maybe related to categorically or from a product perspective, getting into that narrative of a broken link that's related, a keyword that's related to you, and replacing that out to point to you. Yes, but there's the other side of the paradigm here, and that is your competitor's backlink profile. You can run analysis on your competitors. And if you do that, what you're going to find is they're broken links. And there's probably a great many of them. And so it's just the same as an opportunity to reach out and speak to the editors of the site and the site owners and the authors and ask them that you've noticed that the link is broken, but you have a very viable replacement that they can consider. And you could start to work kind of both sides of that fence, your own brand. Well, there's technically at least three. You could do your own brand, you could do keywords, a keyword strategy that's related to you, and you could do your competitors. So I think this is a space to dig into. Ahrefs is probably the tool that we leverage the most for just monitoring backlink profiles. SEMrush is another opportunity that we can use to kind of get a sense offsite. What does that look like, and where do we see the opportunity for broken links? And I think you're going to find just kind of an infinite amount, an ever-growing, maybe it's not infinite, but certainly an ever-growing list of opportunity. All right, skyscrapers. So this skyscraper link building, again, not necessarily new, but evolving. So effectively, skyscraper, the strategy is essentially just, creating content, let's say, that people are going to want to link to, people are going to want to publish because it offers a tremendous amount of value. If you've crystallized it down, that's effectively what's going on. But now in 2022, and it's been evolving, it goes beyond just, okay, great, we garnered backlinks from this creative piece that we did. It's more about looking really at the user intent and getting really hyper targeted content placements. So if you are thinking about, your company, your products, your services are in a very specific sector. Now, let's just say, for sake of argument, that sector is in fashion of some sort. It's not about getting links on sites that are talking about automotive or just exceptionally general in nature, and they're talking about everything, right? This is a little bit more about getting picked up on industry verticals that are niche. And so part of what this really looks like is finding trending and top performing content that is relevant and contextual to your niche and vertical. So it's about looking for content that is has some virality to it, right? And so it needs to be thematically and in a niche capacity related to your vertical. So you really want to make sure that the content that you're searching is something that you are able to also talk about, support, and that folds into the narrative of your business. By doing that, we now get a chance to see, well, what's working, and then you make something even better. I mean, I think most marketing teams, we strive, right? They strive for to do a great many things, but there's bandwidth concerns, and when you're trying to create content that everybody's going to share, that's an investment of time and resources and creatives. Oftentimes, what we can find is that what has been done is great, but maybe we could go a little bit further with it. So finding this content that's trending and then producing something even better allows you to then reach out to those same places where the initial content had been published and propagated and garnered virality, and offer them something even further, something newer, something even better. And maybe your content is equal to, and that can work too, because maybe what you're doing is just giving a little bit of a different lens on that data, or serving the data in a different way that can prove digestible, that type of thing, or it's just visually more attractive, those sorts of things. Websites are always looking for new content. They're always looking for a way to be better at serving their core demographic, their user base. They want to provide value. And so if you come to them and serve up something of value, and especially if it's something that they had talked about before, which they saw people really engaged with, they're going to look for more of that type of content. This provides a great way to open those doors and to start that communication. And yes, that's a great way to build links, but it also builds in thought leadership. It builds in awareness. It builds out brand equity. And that's why people love Skyscraper. The one thing I do want to note is that, well, actually, the three things I want to note is that, part of what you want to do, because there's going to be a ton of content on just about any subject, is really look for content that has a lot of backlinks from strong DA sites. So whether you're using, Moz, for example, BuzzSumo, that's a great tool to really filter through all of the content that's going out there and start to bubble up those that really have the highest level of engagement. That's kind of a starting point for this. But try and also really crystallize that into the segment of, the actual content, like by topic. So consider the keywords that you're exploring and try and set the KD. If you're using something like a SEMrush, move the KD above 40. So the KD is the keyword difficulty. You want to start to find content that's a bit harder to rank for. The KD is a little bit higher, and it's really niche to your types of keywords. And then you want to serve content into that. And the last thing, this is the thing I really wanted to mention, is this notion of reverse skyscrapers. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but it just obviously makes sense. Is that you can do the same thing, but consider the pieces of content that didn't perform as well. So instead of saying, wow, I'm going to go out there, find things that are doing great and do it better. That might feel a little bit of a tall task for some, especially depending on the industry. But if you say to yourself, I'm going to go out there and find the content that actually had something easy, something very valuable to say, right? It had value to it. It was insightful. And we're kind of surprised because based upon the subject matter, topically, it should have done quite well, but it didn't. It's underperforming, right? But nonetheless, that gives you the opportunity to do something even better. And so you can take a look at things that are accelerating exceptionally. I think that's really the way that you could start. But you could also take a look at some areas where maybe the idea was fantastic. The execution of the idea left a bit of wiggle room for you to create something better. And that's why Skyscraper, both sides of that paradigm, can give you opportunities. And so I think what we're seeing here ultimately is that there's a lot of strategies. There's a lot of link building strategies. There's plenty more than that, just the same. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to garner links, right? And the bigger question for me today, and this is why I really wanted to get us into this segment of discussion, and I hope that you'll find this very, very valuable. Because again, if you talk to link builders, if you have an internal team, or if you're thinking of hiring companies, they'll all express the fact that they can get you links. I mean, that's kind of what the thought process is links are available, but are they all created equal? And that's a definitive no. In fact, I think you have to be cautious in your link building acquisition strategies and tactics. This could be as much of a benefit as it could be a deterrent for the growth of your company if it's not executed properly. And that's why when I thought about what did I want to talk about today with you, I really felt like link building is a great place to start. Not because we just do link building, but because I actually see a lot of concern there. I talk to a great many SEOs. I'm in a lot of groups, forums, and et cetera. I've been doing SEO for 17 years. And one thing I know is many of the SEOs that I talk to, when I hear how they build links, is concerning for me on behalf of the brands that they're stewarding. Because if it's something that's black hat, if it's something that's not healthy, that could actually sandbox a site. They can be greatly truncated, lose complete visibility, and things we all work very hard for a long time to build can be, diminished. So, but not to worry. This isn't a sad song. This is good news. And the reason why is because I'm going to tell you what to look for. And if we look at these things and we consider this while we build our links, then what's going to happen is that we're going to be safe and we're going to build something sustainable for the long term. So let's take a look at link metric success. Okay. The first component is domain authority. So you've heard about this. We've talked about this already. So the domain authority, often referred to as DA, right? That's something you want to consider when you're building links. Now, Some people will look at it from the component of DR, and they might look at it from AS. So DR is the domain rating. Well, let me back up. DA is coming out of Moz. So the domain authority is coming out of Moz. The DR is coming out of Ahrefs. That's the domain rating. And the AS, the authority scores, that's coming out of SEMrush. So whichever tool that you're using, I know most everybody kind of defaults to the DA. So you're going to hear the DA talked about the most, and that's fine. It's very, very trusted algo coming out of Moz. That's good. But you can look at the DR and the AS as well, if nothing else, directionally, to get a sense of which trajectory and velocity your domain authority may be moving towards, but also to kind of cross-reference and filter out any false positives. So the thing is, domain authority is huge. It matters, but it's not the only thing. And that's one area that I just want to take a moment and just really get our arms around. Don't be enamored by the domain authority. Don't fall in love with the DA70s and the DA60 links that people might serve up to you. That is a great metric, and it's only one metric. Okay, so something to consider. And the last thing I'll say about it is this: I talked to somebody not long ago who said, "Hey, look at this. I went from a DA 12, I think it was, to 50 in a week." So you look at the DA, and sure, it shows they went from 12 to 50. Then I looked at the DR, and they're right around 12. And then I looked at the AS, and I think they were like 13. And so that's why sometimes you want to, there are black hat tactics out there that can kind of massage and inflate certain numbers. Try and cross filter, and don't fall in love with the DA. It matters, though. You want to look at it, but that's not the only thing that matters. Okay. The next thing you want to consider is the spam score. I put this next because I think it was like out of the last 7 algos, 4 kind of at least have a dotted line back to this. Spam score is important. And oftentimes when I talk to clients, their teams are not even looking at it. And if they are looking at it, it's funny when we say, really, well, what should the maximum spam score be? What should that ceiling be? A lot of people say they don't know, or people selling links will tell you 20, below 15. I wrote here below 10. But here's the truth. I don't like to go above 5 personally. And I think 98% of the links that our team secures in the 1 to 2% ratio. 10 for me would be an absolute ceiling limit. I would have to have other reasons, though, to allow that to live in that capacity. So spam score is something you really want to think about. And the lower, definitively, the better. If you had a domain authority that was in the 70s and a spam score of 17 or 22%, I'm not interested personally. And I don't think my clients would be either. We're looking for healthy, clean links that can provide value long-term and sustainably, and in a way that would be in best practices so that Google would find value too and not raise an eyebrow. So that's another element to consider. Age of the website. I think that makes sense. But I don't think a lot of times it's being really factored in. Again, that's why a lot of times people just I'll give you 2 DA 50 links, a 55 and a 57 for, and it'll help your site. Well, really, what's the spam score? And how long has the site been around? Because again, I have seen sites hit the scene. They come on, they're brand new. 30 days later, they're a DA 60. 30 days. I can tell you that this isn't about a race to the top. That type of needle on the record where their domain authority or their link velocity goes from 0 to 100 that fast. I mean, not 100, but you know what I mean. That's I think, if anything, a warning sign for Google. That's not a natural process. It can happen from time to time naturally, very rarely. So I like to take a look at the age of the site, make sure it's been around and has a history. The last thing I'll say about the ages, I'm watching to make sure that these aren't dropped links. Yeah, it's been around for 12 years, and it's been four different types of websites in that period of time, and now it's a new website altogether, completely different subject matter in the last 30 days. So we're looking for something that's mature and not dropped. Okay. Here's something that I often look at, and it's interesting to me again because I don't hear many people chat about it, but it's so important, right? And that is when you take a look at a website and you're thinking about obtaining a link on that website because, hey, you used one of the strategies and it mapped back to that, and they're contextually look like they're relevant to your site, and it has a good DA and the spam score is low, or the let's omit that. The age of the site is it's mature, it's been around, looks good. But what about the PQ? That's really what it's called. It's percentage of quality links. So how many links that are linking to that site are actually deemed as quality? And I think that's definitely a metric you're going to want to get your arms around, monitor it, make sure that you're seeing a strength in the quality, the percentage of quality backlinks. So those are some of the things to think about, but they're definitively not all. We also want to think about the velocity. So let me just take a minute and chat about this velocity with you, because I think it's very important. Effectively, when we take a look at the trajectory of a website, and that can be their referring pages, referring domains, that could be their domain authority as a whole. If we just took a look at the metrics like domain authority, hey, it's a DA 62, great. Or let's just maybe say this one, because this will give you a better real life example. It's a DA 48. That's respectable. DA 48, good. But if you then look at the velocity, here's the question. Were they a DA 42 a couple months ago or 5 months ago, something like that? Or were they a DA 70 several months ago? And that link trajectory is falling rapidly, and now they're a DA 42. Like, we have to understand this relationship between that growth and that consistency. Nothing ever goes straight up, nothing ever goes straight down, but we want to see some consistency. And I think that's very, very important. I just gave an example for the domain authority. I look at the exact same thing when I'm thinking about how many links do they have? Like, what is the referring links or the referring domains or the referring pages? Is that going up or is that going down? I have seen sites that look great in every way, and then I noticed that they lost literally 30-40% of their links in the last month or two. And there's a variety of reasons for that. And frankly, they're not all good. They're mostly not good at all. And even if they're good for the site health of their site for the long term, it may not be good for you in injecting your link into that space at that time. So try and find something consistent, right? That's been moving north, and it can have ebbs and flows, but it's on a cadence that's going in a northern trajectory for a sustainable period of time. So I think site velocity is very important. All right, anchor diversification. I'm going to chat with you a little bit more about this in just a couple of minutes, but just for now, I'm just going to say this. When you look at building a link, and with everything that we've talked about so far, when that all is in good standing, it's important to take a look at their anchor diversification. So let me give you an example. I have seen so many times, maybe let's talk just for a quick moment about pets, stewarding clients in the pet space, right? And maybe I find a lifestyle blog that's talking about families and dogs, and it's great. And they have great content, and there's some pieces there talking about taking care of your dog. So it folds into dog supplies and dog brushes and dogs, shampoo, pet shampoo, things like that. Looks great for a pet shampoo anchor, and the spam scores low, and all these things are great. And then you look at the anchor diversification. It's so interesting to me. This just happened the other day, and I'm like, this site, a lot of things are looking great. Then I looked at the anchor diversification, meaning the sites that are talking about them. How are they talking about them? What does that anchor look like that links to them? And I'm seeing, 87%, CBD, not that there's anything wrong with that. And then I'm also seeing 14%, how to hack, Roblox and stuff. And it's like, wow, really? So you're telling me effectively the link profile around this site, right, which Google's seeing definitively, is talking about Roblox hacks and CBD and I don't know, right? And so this has to be something that you're thinking about. In other words, when people are talking about the site, does it mimic, echo, resonate with what the site is putting forward as who they are, what they do? and what their who their audience would be or what their audience would be interested in. And I think that's something we definitely do need to think about and get our arms around. All right, no PBNs. I'm sorry if you sell PBNs out there, but in my opinion, you should avoid links in those types of PBN is a private blog network. They're all sharing the same IPs, usually coming from low quality networks. Also, I am hearing, I'm just going to go on record, this is my opinion, although it echoes the opinion of Strategic SEO Solutions. This notion around, hey, link building 2.0, we're going to get links in blog comments. We're going to go out there and spam comments, and you got a link coming back from that. PBNs, blog comments, to me, those are not long-standing, consistent, valuable, Google celebrating the link as much as you are types of links. So I would be very cautious about that. And then you could see this little person up top there with their little, trophy. It's because, this last one here is do follow. So it's, you want to make sure these links are do follow, right? And yes, I've caveated this quite a bit, in fact, here by saying that they don't all have to be do follow links. I think I'm okay with 60-40, like 60% follow, 40% no follow. But when I say that, I'm thinking about the backlink profile as a whole. You see, we talked a little bit earlier about these strategies. Part of the strategy is press, right? PR pickup, syndication, getting picked up in that way. And not all of that is going to be do follow. Not all of the blog posts will be do follow. And so there's going to be certain strategies and segments that lean more to no follow than do follow. So it's natural. You don't have to feel like I need 100% of my links to be follow. And that's okay. But when you find excellent quality, if you look at this pyramid, if you find links that match up to this, try and get the do follow out of that, because that way you get the full value. And then one last caveat to this is that this by no means is a full list of all of the factors that you should consider when you are considering building links. So having your strategies in place so that you bubble up the opportunities and you organically build that relationship with editors so that they're willing to bridge you into content or publish your content, that's great. But then discerning that the link is actually valuable, that it's going to meet Google's algorithmic kind of metrics and standards, that's a different paradigm. And this speaks to the biggest factors that I would start with, but there's certainly more. So I guess what I'm really trying to say is, please do your homework, and slow and steady wins the race for me. And what I mean by that is this is not quantitative. This is qualitative. That is the approach. You will never find me taking a look at competitors and saying, wow, your competitor has 32,112 backlinks. You have 7,000. Well, we better get another, 26,000 links, whatever it is, because we've got to beat them. This isn't that. This isn't about that quantitative notion of you've got to have more. This is about quality. I'd rather have fewer quality links than a great many of low quality, because that's going to build upon itself in a sustainable way. And so will your growth metrics. So I wanted to caveat a little bit of that. Okay, hang in there with me. There's something else I want to talk to you about. And this I'm going to say next, I think will give a little more texture around. So how do we really do this and be successful? What are some of the things that people aren't talking about? And I want to talk about that, because I really want you to succeed. So yes, let me jump into that. All right, here we go. Don't worry, there's only 4 parts to this, and they're easy. So here we go. Part 1, balance. Okay, so again, talk to a lot of clients. It's funny sometimes because they'll say, all right, look, I don't want any DAs below 50, and I so it's 50 to 100, right? And try and keep it in 50 to 60s, 50 to 70, because it's hard to get to 89, 50 to 70, maybe in the 50s or 60s. And so now you've got this exceptionally narrow area where you're trying to get backlinks, and your DA rating distribution, it's not balanced. That is completely unnatural in the eyes of Google, that all of your links would just happen to be in the DA 50s and 60s, all of them, right? I do believe that there's a minimum, and I try and stay in the 30s and north. And yeah, we live in a lot of 40, 50, 60, 70, we do, but we live in all of those buckets and the 30s. And so I think it's important to have balance. Just as much as it's important to have balance in the no follow, do follow, have balance in your DA rating distribution. Don't target any silo too definitively, and don't narrow yourself in too much. Worry more about the metrics we just talked about. Worry about the contextual relevance and the intent-based links, than just that one caveated, hey, DA 50 or nothing kind of a thing, right? So balance, okay? Balance also in your anchors. So I'm going to talk about this quickly. Again, this could be a whole hour, just this, but I'll say it quickly, but it's important. Here we go. When we talk about, let's just think about this so it's very easy for a moment in the lens of a link insert. You found a great article. It's talking about you and your, the industry that you're in, and you want to inject your link into that post because it's talking about your industry in a thematically contextual way. It's all healthy scores, low spam, great DA, and you want to go in there. And now they're saying, great, what do you want your link to be? Well, you have to think about what landing page you're going to point to. That's a whole nother thing. But you also have to think about what is the anchor. What are they going to say? Please be diversified here. I talk to a lot of companies who are like, oh, I've been hearing for a lot of years, don't ever just put a keyword in there, don't do exact match. That's exact match, right? Or maybe they're shying away from category. Truth is, you should nurture them all. You can have some keywords in there. That's fine. You should have some category too. You should have some naked URL. You should have some brand. You should have it all. John Mueller, with Google was talking about the fact that, look, this anchor notion is about giving directional contextual relevance, not only to the user, but to Google. Like, what is this link about? Don't hide it. If there's a don't, I would say don't be ambiguous with a click here or find more. Like, build brand equity, sure. Do some naked URLs, which is like the full string, HTTPS, www, the full string to that URL to your site. Do some of that, right? Do some categorical, some industry language, and definitely support your exact match as part of that balance. Okay, so that's that. All right, paying. I don't know how often everybody thinks about this. Wait a minute, should I pay for links? Do you pay for links? Should we pay? How much should we pay? Is it bad? Are we going to get banned for paying for links? Again, we could probably spend an hour on this, but here's what I will say to you. Quality websites value their links. They value it. They see a monetary segmentation to that. But why? It's because they don't want too many. They don't want any that are not really valuable to the reader. Okay. And here's the truth. They have to communicate with you, right? They have to, read your message about wanting an insert, look at the post that you're talking about, look at the company that you're suggesting. If the sites really are quality, they're not going to just do it. They're going to look at the website that you're talking about. They're going to look at the anchor you want to put in there. And then usually, if you're not giving them a new piece of content, you have to bridge that content, right? You have to add some new verbiage to the post that creates a soft landing over to where they're going. And now we're talking about adding new verbiage and what does that look like? And it takes time. They have to break that content open, add to it, and republish it. So if it incurs a fee, there are many instances where that is real, where that makes sense, where I'm a little bit nervous if they don't. I mean, maybe they're newer sites just looking for content, looking for engagements, things like that. And also there's plenty of sites that will give you free links because what you're saying is valuable and they truly just believe in the company. They believe in what you're saying. I'm not saying you have to pay by any means, but what I am saying is that if somebody does offer this idea into the narrative that there could be a fee to do everything I just talked about, I wouldn't turn them down because of that. I would take a deeper look at that and on occasion be understanding to the notion that makes sense, that their time should be compensated for doing that. By the way, they also tie their own website to the brand that they're linking in. So they're kind of imparting their trust and authority and they know it. And so there should be some value to that. All right. Consistency. Again, back to John Mueller. They asked John not long ago, hey, what's the secret to SEO? And I thought, gosh, that's a tough question. How could he possibly answer that? And I thought he did awesome. And all he said was, yeah, I'll tell you the secret to SEO. It's consistency. And I thought, wow, he nailed it. And the reason why is I can't tell you how many times I talk to companies who say, yeah, I know blogging is important. I'm going to put out 20 blogs and see how it goes. I'm going to build links for like 3 months and see how it goes. And beyond that, think about this. I hear a lot of people talking about, hey, I'm going to build 20 links a month. So the first of each month comes and they race to build 20 links, and maybe they're done on the 10th or 12th of each month, got our 20 and they go dark. Nothing else happened. First of the month comes again, race to get the 20 links and stop. Really, the only way we do it is with that underpinning of consistency. We're in constant outreach. We are building links every week, week after week, month over month, and onward. We don't rush and stop. We just naturally have a growth and a trajectory, and every week some new links are being built, published, garnered. Trust continues to increase with a consistency and trajectory. I think that is very, very important. And so, so I think that's just consistency is key. And the last one here is soft landing. Again, we don't want abrupt, and we don't want to put links out on websites that just always point back to the homepage. Please think about that contextual narrative, right? So both in the anchor and in the content that they're going to see when they land on the page, please think about bridging that in a way that's receptive and creates a soft landing. It's very important to optimize the page that they're going to land on to be in support of your backlink strategy. So you want to support the offsite with the onsite. The two in tandem is where real success is. And wrapping this up in a sense, I just want to say that if you kind of follow these thought processes, follow those metrics that you're vetting these links, follow those strategies, well, it sets you up for success. It's that DA50 everyone's talking about. And that's a great thing. But we talked about a lot of things. I guess I talked about a lot of things, and there's strategies we kind of just moved right through, and metrics we just moved right through. And I just want you to know, we're here to help. And I really mean that. I mean, this is a place of passion for me and my team. And you don't have to do it alone. So if you want any help with the strategy, if you want help with execution, if you want to talk about this more definitively, please feel free to reach out. And I mean that. Like, my Calendly is directly on the contact page. You can talk to me. Or you could email the team. My team and I, we're here to help. If it's a bandwidth issue for you, but you want to build DA, we're here to help and do it in a way that's best in class. And we're actually here to help beyond that too, to make sure your website is set up for success. So I wanted to thank everybody for coming. And I know I'm sorry that there was a number of slides, but I did want to take some time and also open this up for some Q&A. So Cynthia, I'll turn that to you.
Thank you so much, John. We have a few questions, and I'll just get right into it. The first one is from Missy, who asks, are links from .edu and .gov domains still better quality than other top-level domains, or does it not matter?
Okay, thank you for the question, Missy. EDU links they're impactful. The .govs are impactful too. But I'm gonna throw two little caveats in there to think about. So, do I like those types of links? Yes. Does Google like those links? Sure. From a broad stroke, yes, they're good. They still, why? Most of them, the authority is tremendous. I mean, if you're coming out of a .gov or you're coming out of a .edu, what we're really saying here is that those sites have EAT, right? They have experience, authority and trust, right? They have that expertise, authority, trust, EAT. If they have that, they're helping to impart that on your website. And that EAT is an algo that is critical in today's landscape. But here come the caveats. One, there still needs to be relevance. So it was just maybe a month or so ago, I took a look at somebody who had shared some links that they picked up in the EDU sense and said, hey, what do you think about these? They had strong DA, they had really clean metrics, but they literally just plugged the brand and the anchor into these posts that had nothing to do with what they did. So there has to still be this contextual relevance between what's happening in that EDU space or that .gov space and where you're sending the traffic to. So please try and make sure that's happening. The other thing is that a lot of it's gated. In fact, literally like 3 days ago, I was looking at a couple links, everything matched up. And then I looked at the search operator and actually just tried to pull the indexation of the link where the insert lived, and it was not indexed by Google at all because it was gated. You almost had to be a student to be able to get into those areas to even see that content. And so that wouldn't help. So but beyond that, I think there's certainly some opportunities there.
Great, thanks. We have a question from Emma. How do you feel about free business directory links?
Well, whether it's free or whether it's paid, I think directory links, to be transparent, they fold into a different segment, which is called citations. Those citations are important. They back into something called NAP, right? Name, address, phone number, NAP. And there's no doubt about the notion that can you help your SEO, your search engine optimization, your visibility in search by having consistency within the NAP? And that answer is yes, you can. So business directories are great. They build citations. And what you need to have is consistency there. So whatever you have on your website for your name, address, phone number needs to match throughout the overarching ecosystem of those citations. And there's hundreds and hundreds of directories. I'm not a big fan of them in the notion of, hey, we're going to build authority from this. We're going to build domain authority or thought leadership or those sorts of things. But they have their place and they have their value. So I would still run them through the same metrics. I would make sure they don't have strong spam, that they're a real directory. And that they have some maturity to them, but just know that's really a different lens on why we're harnessing those citations to build our SEO.
Okay, thanks, John. I think we have time for one more question, and this one's from Andrea. I've run into it's about paid link insertion. So I've run into a lot of walls with sites that required paid link insertion. It's not something my company engages in since it's strictly against Google's guidelines. I feel like I don't get to be particular with metrics of the sites I want to target because of this. Do you have any advice?
Well, I do. First and foremost, I'm going to tackle this in two different ways. So the first way is this: if you want to hold the line on that, approach, which is if there's any payment to be exchanged, it's not going to happen, then you have to now lean deep and heavy into the creatives. So you have to have something so strong coming from your brand and your vertical, your niche, your industry, that sites are going to want to publish it. And now you can start to have a say. If you produce something that's really, really valuable, it's just a matter of editorially reaching out and shopping it around, but you're going to get people and places that want to pick it up. Here's the other part to this: lean heavy in the digital PR. If that's the way it is, and you want to have a pick, start reaching out to podcasts, start doing some PR and syndication, start jumping into the editorial and the journalistic communication, and get picked up in digital press, even just in standard press and not just press, but actual magazines and outlets. If you start jumping into that, we do a ton of that digital PR, and that's a great way and the last thing I'll say, but it's important. The problem with that approach is you're going to have to kind of send out a number of pitches that just don't go anywhere. But the ones that do go somewhere, they're like hitting a ball out of the park. And so what I mean by that is sometimes we're going to have to craft quotes that for their consideration to be inserted into their piece that they're writing. Sometimes they don't pick up the quote, and the time and effort was for naught. But other times they do pick it up, and boy, those and now you don't pay anything for those. And you start to have a say in where that lands, because as you watch the wires, there's opportunities every day. You pick the opportunities that you want out of the digital PR wires.
All right, John. Well, that wraps up the webinar for today. Thank you so much for this engaging presentation. And to our attendees, if we didn't get to your question, we will be sure to pass it along to John and Strategic SEO Solutions. On behalf of Search Engine Land, I want to thank everyone in our audience for attending this webinar. We hope to see you again soon.